time has come. So now let us start the program. So I welcome all our air warriors and other warriors for today's program of remembering our war heroes, be it 71 or 65. Now today's guest you all know is none other than Air Marshal Cariappa, Paramvisita Seva Medal and Vice Medal. So he is with us already on the call. Let's all welcome him with a thunderous applause for his participation. Great privilege, honor, and respect. And in fact, it's a great inspiration for us to have you on the call. So now, may I start the program, sir, with your program and permission by introducing yourself, Cariappa, sir?
Yes, indeed, Mr. Rao. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So today's braveheart, Air Marshal K Cariappa, the proud son of our General or Field Marshal K Cariappa. So now our Air Marshal sir was born. He is popularly known as Nanda in his close circles. Born on 4th January 1938. Good province of British India, presently known as Kodagu in Karnataka. So now, as you all know, he's a great air warrior. So he served from 1951 to 1986. So,
that's not quite right. I served from 1957 to 1996.
Okay, sir. Sorry. Okay.
Right, sir. Yes.
Okay. So retired in the rank of an air marshal. So he held the commands of No.8 Squadron and No.111 Helicopter Unit, and he participated in Indo-Pakistan War of 1965. Awarded Paramvisita Seva Medal and Vaisana Medal for his distinguished services in Indian Air Force. And as we all know, he is the son of Field Marshal Cariappa. So that is his, and as a flight lieutenant, he participated in 1965 war, and he entered into the enemy territory on September 22nd, 1965 war, and unfortunately his aircraft was shot down, and he crash landed there, and thereafter Pakistani soldiers took him as a captive, taken him as a prisoner of war. So we appreciate, we honor, we salute your greatness, sir, as being a brave heart. So though I served in 15 years and never got a chance to see the war, now I am getting to know from the warriors like you how the war was like. We had a beautiful sessions with our Air Commodore Kurvilla sir and Air Commodore Bhargava sir and Group Captain Lazarus sir. So those people in fact narrated their real life stories. So, in fact, given us a lot of goosebumps for us, for all the listeners. So now I request you on behalf of all our air warriors to share your experiences, sir, about your service and your experiences in service, sir. Thank you, sir. It's over to our Air Marshal Cariappa, sir.
Mr. Rao, thank you very much for that introduction, which is extremely flattering, and I'm not sure that I am really deserving of all that you said. You did mention at the outset that you wanted me to talk for about 1 hour. Now, you would remember when you were in service, as I'm sure our my other brothers in the service who are on the panel and otherwise, would remember a security poster that used to be in all Air Force stations. It was like this: a wise old owl sat in an oak. The more he saw, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard.
Yes, sir.
Why can't we all be like that wise old bird?
So far in service is okay, sir, but no, unless you tell us, we can't know.
I agree, but I know the point is this: I'm not really given to talking about myself, what I did in the service, except for the fact that I'm extremely proud to be a warrior, a veteran, an airman, whatever you call me. I was commissioned in 1957, and the honor was done to me by my father, who pinned my wings onto my chest when he was invited to do so by the then Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Mukherjee. Thereafter, I've served in fighters and helicopters, and I've served in 20 Squadron in Pune and in Ambala. In fact, I've served in only three flying units, 20 Squadron, 8 Squadron, and 111 Helicopter Unit. It was while I was flying, among the courses that I've done, perhaps the most rewarding was that at the Flying Instructor School in Tambaram, where I graduated as a qualified flying instructor. I flew the HT-2 in Allahabad for about a year and a half. And then in 1965, when the balloon first went up the skirmish in Kutch, we were called from PTE, Pilots Training Establishment, to report to squadrons to refresh our ability to fly the aircraft. Nothing happened then. We returned to our respective units till 1965, September, when the balloon really went up. And we were again recalled, and I was told to report to my squadron. At that time, it had moved to Hindon. It is 20 Squadron. From there, we were providing aircraft to the frontline airfields of mainly Halwara, because we had hunters. And on the 10th of September 1965, I flew with a very fine young officer who is alas no more, a Flight Lieutenant Banshaw. He was killed during the war after the 10th of September. And we flew sorties I was attached to 7th Squadron, from where I flew sorties with other officers and in various missions, mainly involving offensive support of the army and attacking targets of opportunity. On the 22nd of September, I was detailed to fly to lead a formation of 4 aircraft to attack targets of opportunity across the border. The 4 aircraft, 4 members of my formation were now who we call Kuke Suresh, subsequently awarded a Veer Chakra in 71. Amarjeet Kular, who was also awarded a Veer Chakra in 71. Baby Sehgal and myself. At the takeoff point, Suresh's aircraft went unserviceable. He didn't take off. After getting airborne and before crossing the border, Amarjeet Kular's aircraft went unserviceable and he returned. So only Baby Sehgal and I crossed over to attack whatever we could see by way of enemy movement in terms of convoys or tanks or whatever else. Having dropped our bombs and having fired at some targets, on our way back, we were being fired at by ground fire. And it was at this time, when I was in process of an attack, that my aircraft was hit. And it had multiple hits, in fact. And all my warning lights came on. My controls froze and my aircraft was on fire. My number 2, Baby Sehgal, called up and he said, "Cari, you're on fire, eject." I said, "I know." And all I remember then was to ejecting out of the aircraft at very low level and at very high speed. I was couldn't have been more than 100 feet above the ground. And we must have been doing it about 400 knots, which translates to over 500 kilometers an hour. I ejected, and I do remember my flying boots flying off. It had to do, obviously, with the speed at which I was flying. And I was saved by the very fine Martin Baker ejection seat, which the parachute had barely deployed, and I landed on the ground on my buttocks. I was immediately surrounded by troops in khaki, who I initially thought to be Indians. Till our artillery opened up, and one of them said, "Those are your guns firing at us." Then I realized I was now in Pakistani hands. I was asked who I was, and I said, "My name is so-and-so. As per requirements of the Geneva Convention, we just give you the number, your rank, and your name, and nothing more than that." They didn't pursue that. And when I was asked to raise my hands and surrender, I said, I can't move. I was paralyzed. It seemed to me if I was paralyzed, I couldn't move at all. So they got hold of a stretcher and they carried me to what it turned out to be, and I presume, was a brigade headquarters, which I had been attacking unknowingly, and where I was interrogated briefly by an officer. Don't know who he was because I was blindfolded by now. And he said, are you related to General Cariappa? My father was a general at that time. And I said, my name is so-and-so, my rank is so-and-so, and this is my service number. They didn't pursue that. And I was eventually bundled off and sent to a rear post in a place called Luliani for onward dispatch to wherever they were going to send me. All this happened on the 22nd of September, and I was moved to MH in Lahore, where an X-ray was carried out. Because of my pain and injuries that I suffered in my hand because of shrapnel, I was treated well indeed by the authorities in the hospital at Lahore, but I was kept in solitary confinement. During my visit, during my stay in Lahore, I was visited, and I presume more out of curiosity than anything else, by the then Army Chief, General Musa. I was Commander-in-Chief of the Pak Army. He asked me, is there anything I can do for you? So I said, I'd like to be united with the other Indian prisoners of war. And so I let it be at that. I didn't think twice, why did General Musa come to see me? And so a few days later, I was flown off to Rawalpindi.
Sorry for the interruption, sir. 1 second. Rajnikant Damle, sir, please put your mic off. Switch off your... we are getting noise. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
May
I continue? Okay. So I was then moved to Rawalpindi, where I spent quite a lot of time in solitary confinement in a cell, which was about maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. And the only furniture, there was no furniture for a start, apart from a concrete block which was supposed to serve as a bed. But in the event a charpai was produced, and I was given 3 typical army, what we call in just horse blankets, nothing else. I was interrogated there, and even during the course of interrogation, I was told by the officer, saying, "Look, nobody knows you're alive. Nobody knows who you are. So your name is this, and so you better come out with truth and give us names and any other information that we ask of you." I said, "Look, I don't know very much, except this is my name, like a number." I was posted. I took off from Halwara. There was an open secret, and so who are the other officers in your on your station, in your course, etc. So I made a few names. There was no point in really hiding something because I'm not really giving away any state secrets. Then from there, having spent about 20 days in solitary confinement in Rawalpindi, I was moved.
May I interrupt you, sir? May I interrupt you now at this stage? Okay, solitary confinement. You can now. How are your feelings during the time when you crash landed and you were caught by the enemies and taken as a captive? What were your in mind, sir, during that time?
I had no feelings at all. I resigned myself to the fact that I was a prisoner. And I presumed to myself that in due course of time, I would be returned or repatriated. At no time was I ever concerned or worried or afraid of death or anything like that. The one thing about a prisoner, particularly in those circumstances, is a fear of the unknown. You don't know whether anybody else knows about whether you'll be threatened, yes, but you don't take, you take it in your stride. Fine, I'm a prisoner of war, these kind of things that happen. And what I experienced is really a drop in the ocean when you compare it to what prisoners of war in other wars, in other countries, have experienced at the hands of their captors. And so really speaking, 4 months that I spent in Pakistan were really minuscule in terms of time frame.
Okay.
However,
yes,
I went off to I joined the main prisoner of war camp in a place called Dargai, where there were 3 compounds for the officers. One only for Indian Army officers who were not Sikh, separate Sikh compound for the 10 or 12 Sikh officers who'd been taken prisoner, and a third compound with 7 Air Force officers, where I spent the rest of my time. My colleagues at that time, to start off in terms of seniority, were Air Marshal Sikang, who's still alive and kicking, God bless him. Then there was a Pilu Kakar, who was killed sometime after 1971, I think, or before that, in HF 24. Then there was Flight Lieutenant Sadarangani, who died who died very recently. He joined Air India after leaving Air Force. There was Flight Lieutenant Low, a Canberra pilot who was shot down on the same day that I was. There was Flight Lieutenant M.V. Singh, now deceased. Flight Lieutenant Mayadev, who lives in Mumbai and fairly close. He has a farm just outside, and I was the 7th. So we spent time. The moment you are in company of your own nation, your own people, your confidence levels and your feeling of well-being really soars, and nothing can really put you off. For some reason during that period, Low and I were sent off to, again, in solitary confinement to an Air Force station. I don't know where exactly it was. And sent back inexplicably till it was time for us to be repatriated on the 22nd of January 1960. We really began to feel a great deal more confident about things happening sooner, as soon as we received Red Cross passes, because the acceptance of Red Cross passes meant that your presence was accepted by the captors, and this information had been passed on to your own country. We received Red Cross parcels, and it was during this period that I first learned of General Cariappa, who happened to be the same clan. I happened to be the same clan as he, passing away in Cyprus on the 18th of December 1965. And quite coincidentally, on my birthday on the 14th of January the following year, 1966, I received a small matchbox. And it was a small statuette of Ganesha. And it had been sent to me by Mr. Simaya. I was very close to General Mr. Simaya. And he had always had this on his desk, on his dressing table in his lifetime. And I was, because I was close to them and I treated more like a son, it was a wonderful omen, as far as I was concerned, that God's blessings were upon me. However, to cut a long story short, we returned on the 22nd of January, and thereafter, because I was low medical category with a fractured spine and an injured arm, I was appointed as ADC to then Air Chief Marshal Unsung, Chief of Air Staff. I spent about over 2.5 years with him, and towards the end of my tenure, I asked if I could be, and I was unfit to fly if I had a fighter aircraft, but I was scared to fly anything else. And I asked if I could be convert onto helicopter. And